In the heart, Houston, Texas, silent crisis unfolds within our charter and inner city schools. Despite the promise of educational reform, many students face systemic challenges that hinder their potential and academic future.
Good afternoon to those who are viewing this video and to those in the audience. My name is Ashley. My kids at the school know me. It's Ashley. I am a 26-year-old, a senior in college studying general studies with a concentration in chemistry and biology. Just to fast forward a bit about myself as far as my educational route, I found myself veering from pre-med to now primary and secondary education. I'm going to go ahead and cut to the chase in this conversation and say kids are not getting any smarter at all, and they're becoming less self-sufficient. For my kids that go to predominantly white schools, they go to some of the nicer, newer looking schools in the suburbs, or even my private school kids that have chefs and an option to opt in for STAR testing, just like another school that I am about to get to in a second. But for my more privileged kids, this really isn't too much of a conversation with them, but still has just as much to do with them if this affects them. But I am going to be talking about a specific group of students and children that are suffering from the topic of today's conversation. But what about the inner city kids and the charter school kids? You know, the kids that go to the schools that are on government assistance, is what I like to say. What about them? Because environmentally they stay where they stay, in the neighborhoods that they live in. You know, some might say borderline impoverished, high in crime rates. The usual public transportation actually runs in these neighborhoods. What are their schools lacking? Imagine being 7 years old. So at 7 years old, you're like, between first, second grade, and you've come to the realization at that age that just about every adult in your everyday life is in control of your future. And I'm referring to the adults that are not just mom, dad, grandma, auntie, foster mom. I'm also talking about staff, custodians, principals, administration. Charter school is a publicly funded institution, usually involving both educational groups, service groups, community groups, parents, teachers, all of that. It is a school that indeed receives government assistance. What is the difference between a charter school and your average regular public school? Schools indeed have more autonomy, which is both a huge benefit, but with great power comes great responsibility. That is unfortunately lacking. Charter schools have the option to opt in or out of standardized state testing. But of course, with the caliber of charter schools that exist here in Houston, Texas, in addition to what is more specifically located in the inner city as well, is in how these institutions are being managed and ran by the staff. And most charter schools are usually located in, like I've stated numerous amounts of times, in inner city areas. Those charter schools are usually on like a street where public transportation runs, i.e. the city bus. There might be a few corner stores and gas stations with less fortunate people hanging around outside of them, or there might be some other suspicious activity that is also occurring literally steps away from the schools themselves. So right here to the left, this is one of the schools that I was a side director at. You could probably tell from the background, it's super early on a Saturday morning.
but the location of the school is a little more compromised than others. But it just at least gives you an idea of like one, the surroundings and environment kind of relate to the affordability and funding that these schools receive. And if you think that environment doesn't affect how a child learns, then you're definitely blind for sure.
In addition to that, the barbed wire fences and gates, though one would like to think, okay, this is to protect the students, which I'm sure is what the purpose is, but the look of the barbed wire and gates just gives toddler prison, unfortunately. And then, of course, the school dress code being uniforms. Of course, there's a benefit to having uniforms for those that are unable to just buy whatever they would like to wear, and it limits any distractions. Still, the uniforms plus the gates, that pipeline to prison, you get where I'm going with that point. Most charter schools that at least I have worked at and have seen, they look very run down. One charter school in particular that I used to work at, it actually was an old office building converted into a school. So the hallways are super narrow. There's like no lockers for the middle school students. Though they turned it out to make it look like a presentable school, still it just has that sad, depressing, oh, here I go clocking in, getting trapped into this American dream cycle where I work until I die kind of look to it, unfortunately. The outside violence that just is occurring in the area, and what the kids see, whether walking to school, taking the city bus, and all of that, going to the corner stores, just unpleasant. And to think that it has no effect on their learning on the inside of the school is ignorant.
So the library's right next to me, but the kids used to walk over this way, to wait for their parents and stuff. Public transportation does run in this area and in neighborhoods like this, so you could imagine what the kids do see across the street, across the way, and such. But again, all of this ties into their academic success.
We've already talked about what's going on right outside the school doors, but more importantly, what's being carried out inside of the school doors. So I have seen charter schools that do have, and they have like pictures on the walls. There's the school boards that are announcing certain events occurring at the school. It looks like a school and inviting. And I've also seen some where all the walls are just plain and gray, and there's just no effort to make the environment more vivid and bright for the students. So with that, but as soon as those children sit in their seats, then there's the wonder of what is it that they are consuming and not consuming? How is their schedule? How is their routine? All of that. So there's a lot of testing going on. If I have this correct from what I've gathered from research, charter schools, because they are government funded and depend a whole lot on the funding, every child is definitely a test score. So though there is the option to opt out of certain state mandated testing, of course they're not going to do that, because there's got to be some kind of proof that these children are thriving enough for this school to stay open and not shut down. So when every child is being treated like a test score, other things are being dismissed. All the kids are not getting the services that they need, whether SPED, speech, dyslexia services, RTI services, and the students will tell you this themselves. And these are all experiences that I have and am currently having here in real time, where the kids are like, why don't I get pulled anymore? I'm not getting pulled by anybody else. I'm supposed to be pulled by somebody else, but I'm not pulled. And it's just like, okay, so what's going on? Like, we've had meetings about this, we've talked about this, that we've talked and discussed the plan, but there's no implementation of the action itself. Then you have the staff and how the teachers are engaging and communicating with the students. To my two eyes, most charter schools and inner city schools are patient of these schools are people of color, mostly African American and Hispanic, of course. So I've seen, which I love to see, educators all look like the students that they're teaching. But it's unfortunate when you have those that are the first and 15ers, and it seems like there's more of those than the ones that actually care about a child's education being in their hands, period. Children will also communicate out loud how they're being treated in the classrooms, and how their lessons are being carried out. If there's no homework assignments, there's no instruction on how to carry out the homework assignments and all of that. And ultimately, the kids just check out. I've had students tell me that they're trying. They want to get a good grade in their math class or their reading class, but the teacher is not meeting them halfway. So it's more than just being qualified with a degree and on a resume, but how is this teacher with the students for real? That's the real question. Because from what I've seen, it just looks a lot like I'm here for the check, and this is just babysitting to me. I could care less about what the future is of this small human being that cannot fend for themselves, at least at this point in their life currently. What they're also ingesting is affecting their brain activity, in addition to the consumption of technology. We are in a technology advanced society. Kids can't get away from technology at home, and I just feel like it would be great to have a balance in the schools and in the classrooms to have the use of technology, of course, to keep them up to date, but still implementing those little old school methods that include them working on packets, working out the problems, using a pencil, using their brain before having them depend on a calculator. I recall when I was filling in for tutorials at a high school for the juniors that had failed, I believe it was like their standardized math test a few years ago, and I kid you not, the AP or coordinator in charge told myself and the other interventionists at the time to teach them how to do it in the calculator. That's all you're here for. And that didn't sit well with me at all, because, okay, teaching them how to do it in the calculator is one thing, but that's it? And I'm old school, so I like to think that do it on paper first, because you can see your steps, see what you did. Less room for being confused on what buttons you accidentally pressed in the settings of a calculator. The calculator should be used as a tool to just double check your answers and confirm, not dependence. And that is unfortunately what is being pushed to the students as they reach 8th grade, where they can use calculators. I get it, the lack of funding, but there's got to be something worth funding, if that makes any sense at all. These are examples I'm sharing because I've been present for these examples. I've been present when schools ran out of food at lunch, and I've been present at schools where there was no access to drinking water and the water fountains. So you have kids thirsty all day. I even took it upon myself to keep bottles of water in the classroom. And I think some of us feel like, oh, kids are wasteful, like they ain't gonna drink all that water. But no, the way they fiend for water, you would have thought we were in a drought. How can they focus if they are hungry, if they are thirsty, especially when some of these children, this meal and this access to water is something they depend on for the rest of the day because of what's occurring back at home. Lack of counseling for the students, that's a big one. Those students definitely need someone to let them know things will be okay. They need motivation. They need a hug. They don't need you yelling at them every few minutes, getting frustrated easily with them every couple of minutes. No. Of course, I'm speaking about all of this out of pure experience, what I've seen, what I've looked up. But in addition to what I've looked up to confirm that the Carfax is indeed accurate, I have here to show some of the test scores and what things are looking like. And things are looking like they're on a decline for the HISD district. Kids have significantly failed in their scoring by over 30% within the last year to 2 years, which is very serious because Texas is a state where a lot of people admire the education and sports. Like, when we were some front runners here, but right now it's not looking so much like that, at least in the HISD district.
STAR test results are in, and those numbers released by the TEA show a dramatic drop in test scores. We're talking about 2021 test results, which are being compared to scores from back in 2019. The test in 2020 was canceled, as you'll recall, because of the COVID pandemic. KPRC2's Sion Rhodes taking a closer look now at those numbers tonight. She is live at HISD headquarters in Northwest Houston. Sion?
We reached out to several districts across our area, only hearing back from HISD, who told us they were still going over the numbers. They weren't quite ready to talk about them just yet. But the state education agency says their assessment of the results show just how seriously the pandemic impacted learning, something that at least one teachers union disagrees with. The number of students failing to meet grade level went up statewide across all grade levels and nearly all subject areas from 2019, when the STAR test was last administered prior to the pandemic. Here's a look at numbers in some of our biggest school districts. In HISD, 41% of students failed to meet standards in reading. That's up 8 percentage points. In math, the percentage of students failing to meet standards nearly doubled. In Cy-Fair ISD, the number of students not passing reading went up 4 percentage points and increased by 14 percentage points in math. And in Katy ISD, the number of students failing to meet standards went up 2 percentage points in reading and 7 percentage points in math. The Texas Education Association said the declines were even greater in districts with a higher percentage of students learning virtually. In a statement, Education Commissioner Mike Morath called the data disheartening, but added teachers and school leaders are building action plans to support students in the new school year, with policymakers directing resources where they're needed the most.
With the data sharing that, okay, this isn't working. The students are on a decline. It's showing, the numbers are there. What you can see is there as well. How do we change it? What is the plan of action? What do we do? Where do we go from here? First things first, the adults that are in control of all of this have to be on one accord. Communication has to be there, but we can't just communicate and talk it and plan it. It has to be implemented to a T. The proper schedule where you don't have first graders switching between 3 and 4 teachers. That's just plain ridiculous. So much dependence on the technology and the scoring and giving them their laptops to work on and then having them do that for the next 4 to 5, 6 hours, then lunchtime, then repeat. No, there has to be a balance of that. And then also just regular check-ins. I believe from what I've seen, the rules are skewed, the rules are bent in charter schools, unfortunately. So you do see a lot of things that are not by the book, and I am one of those by the book kind of instructors. So if everyone could be by the book, then we could get somewhere. Actually making sure that these children are getting all of the services they need, from their counseling sessions in the middle of the day to their SPED services, to their speech and dyslexia services. All of these kids should be being serviced properly within that hour of alt time or whatever that hour is of their extracurricular time. It has to fit somewhere that works for the students. And then, of course, making sure the facilities are all up to par. Now, those are just a summary of a few changes that could seriously be made. But I'm also very aware work has to be done at home. And unfortunately, we have in these kind of schools kids that are really coming from some of the roughest home lives, some who aren't living with mom or dad or grandparents. They are at school all day, including after school until 7 o'clock, so they're tired. Then they've got to do grown-up things and duties for their younger siblings or nieces and nephews and whatnot. And then lack of resources as well. So I'm aware of only being able to control what we can after school. We should do our part with at least extending resources out to parents, like, hey, maybe, hey, is there a way we can work out transportation for after school tutorials? Maybe trying to get the parents more engaged, like figuring out different ways to get the parents engaged and more, serious about their child's educational career path. Putting on more school and family-friendly events, I think, would help as well, that do service to education and not just barbecue or cookout, but there's some learning elements to it, like they do at some of these suburban schools. Let's see, have a PTA established at the school, because there are parents that just don't know. You've got some that just don't care, and it's unfortunate. So we can only provide the services, meet them halfway. If they choose not to, that's on them, but then it's our job as the educators, the teachers, the adults that they see every day for many hours of the day for most of their lives, to let them know, hey, I'm here, I see you, I care about you, I'm with you on this journey, so do not give up regardless of who isn't there for you. HISD is one school district. You see articles all the time of where this is occurring in other states. Yeah, something's got to give, and something has to be done quickly. My last question to close out my discussion would be, are we really making sure that no child is left behind? Thank you.